Ginny. Ginny, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Jerry. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen, and I have some slides for you. I have built in plenty of time for questions. So before we even start, I want to say, feel free to raise your hand, and Jerry and Terry are going to be watching that to let me know, because I'm going to have to make you tiny when I put my notes up over here and put my slides up over here. And I've also got a couple of handouts for you that I am going to slide into the chat here, so that you can download them. Here are the slides. Okay, and they are there in a PDF, and you can download them. And here is a needs matrix, which we're going to use later. And you will have that, so you can download that. You're not going to need these probably during the presentation, but you'll have them for afterwards. Okay. All right, and please feel free to put your questions in the chat as well. And I think you just said that in the chat. All right, I'm going to make that part go away. And now I am going to share my screen. And we're going to turn this into a slideshow here, so you don't have to look at all these other little things from the beginning. And there we go. And now we're ready to go. All right. So I talk with a lot of boards, as Jerry said. I talk with a lot of boards, all kinds of organizations, all kinds of nonprofits. And this topic, board engagement, is one of the two things that people want to talk about the most, along with fundraising. So if you work on a board or you work with a board, I hope that this information is going to be helpful to you. Again, feel free to jump in, feel free to stop me, feel free to, we have the time to talk about stuff. So I want to start here with a quote. Great leaders understand that it is impossible to compartmentalize elements of life so that you create opportunities for people to grow in every area. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how to make board members stay and how to make board members want to stay. And it may seem counterintuitive, okay, what we're going to talk about, because I'm going to ask you to standardize your procedures about bringing leadership level volunteers who are board members into your organizations, and then to personalize those procedures for each person. So standardize to personalize, okay? And personalizing doesn't mean that the standardizing was wasted, I promise. It only means that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just need to get to know the person. You need to get to know these people. It's an intentional way to be efficient and warmly human at the same time. And if there's anything that farmers markets are, it's warmly human. It's one of my favorite places to be on a Saturday morning, I'll tell you that. And these are your most important volunteers. Ideally, they will be your best ambassadors. They're going to determine the direction of your organization because they're your board members. They'll be passionate about what you do. And they're going to have very specific ideas about how they want to help. So their service on your board will fit into other areas of their lives. And it can enhance those other areas. And that's the secret sauce that we'll talk about at the end. But that's why they'll stay. That's why they'll stay with you. They'll be getting what they need. And they'll be getting what they need out of the relationship, even as they're giving your organization exactly what it needs from them. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And that's what I want to talk about creating today. Okay, so this, I didn't even ask, can everybody see the slides? Is there anybody who can't see the slides? Please let us know in the chat if you can't see the slides. This is the engagement cycle. Everything revolves here, okay? This is the engagement cycle for bringing people, all people, board members, volunteers, supporters of all kinds, into your organization. How do you plan for recruiting people and making them want to work with you? You use this engagement cycle. How do you welcome people to your organization and make sure that they feel like part of your organizational family? Make them part of the family. And how do you serve them while they serve you? They work for you while you're working for them. It's a it's a mutual relationship. How do you steward them so that they feel appreciated and so that they stay? And putting a plan in place. These are the pieces that all organizations have to figure out. And these are the things that we're going to talk about. So everybody with me so far? Are we good? Okay. All right. So this is a strategy for retaining leadership level volunteers. This is the beginning of this strategy. Effective boards have a plan for who they invite onto their board and how they do it. Not just warm bodies. People on your board that can do what you need them to do. How do you get them up to speed? And how do you make sure that they're on the same page in terms of what's expected of them? Effective board members are people who are passionate about the mission. And again, they understand what's expected of them. Recruit for passion first. I know that you're going to recruit for other demographics. You have to. You need skills, you need representation, whatever that representation is. Is it geographic, is it racial, is it gender, is it age? The answer is yes. But mostly skills. You need specific skills, but start with passion. You don't want anybody, you can't teach that, first of all. And you don't want anybody on your board who isn't passionate about what you do, who doesn't feel very strongly about what you do. Conflict of interest. Conflict of interest is about self-dealing, and you want to make sure you have a policy in place about conflict of interest so you don't have to mess with it, so that if it comes up, you can just deal with it because you already have a policy in place. The IRS asks you if you have a policy in place every year on your 990. And if the IRS asks about it, you want your answer to be yes, because the IRS doesn't have a sense of humor. So you want to make sure that the answer is yes about anything that they ask you. If you are you doing this? Absolutely, you bet. It's already in place. We don't have to mess with it. The board is one body with many moving parts, and it's important to define and articulate exactly what the positions are and what they're responsible for. We're going to talk about job descriptions in a couple of slides, but it's important to know exactly what you're asking people to do. And again, have it already done so you don't have to mess with it. Every board, every effective board evaluates itself, usually annually. And often there's an evaluation for the board as a body and an evaluation for individual board members so that they can decide if they're doing what they want to be doing and if they're meeting their own standards. Because that's what you want them to do. You want them to meet their own standards. And healthy organizations make sure that there's an avenue for fresh ideas, right? And you want to be able to preserve your culture and your history, and you want to make sure that you're allowing for turnover, for natural attrition, and for term limits and all of that. And you do that with succession planning. And I want to bring to your attention that there is language about succession planning in the new, if you're in Washington, in the new Washington Nonprofit Corporation Act. And so I am going to put that in the chat as well. There is a link here for a page on the Washington Nonprofits website. And that's the membership organization, as you probably know. That's the membership organization for nonprofit organizations. And they have a page that's about this new act that took effect on January 1st. And looking at their page and getting the stuff that they have about it is a whole lot easier than trying to read the legislation. Believe me, I tried, and then I went to Washington Nonprofits. they've got a lot of, they've got videos, they've got stuff you can, one pages you can download and stuff like that. So it's a lot easier. So succession planning. And the last thing's culture. Every organization and every board has a culture. And it's made up of three things. It's made up of artifacts, which is your stuff. That's your printed materials and your promotional materials and the stuff you put out and your artifacts. Your actions, and that's how you run the place and how you communicate with people. And then assumptions is the third thing. Artifacts, actions, and assumptions make up your culture of your organization and of your board. And assumptions are often not spoken. They're not written down anywhere. Are there things that we don't talk about? Are there things that this is just the way we do it and there's no discussion to be had about it? Watch out for assumptions. Watch out for assumptions because people assimilate those without anybody really telling them through experience. And so you want to make sure that your culture is that you consciously decide what your culture looks like and what those assumptions are and what all those things are, that you consciously decide, because if you don't, there's going to be a culture anyway, but it might not be what you want it to be. So you want to make sure that you consciously decide what that culture is. Okay. With me so far? Anything we need to go back and talk about? All right, moving right along, we go. Okay, this is a board matrix. It's a needs matrix. And I have put a sample in the chat for you so you can download it and use it as a template. It's easy to make and it's easy to use. One axis, the vertical axis, has the members of your board as it exists right now. And these are names that you already know, and you know a lot about these people, and they've already told you what they want to contribute, and you already know how they work and what they work on. The other axis, the horizontal axis, is your needs. In order for your board to accomplish the tasks that it has set, what kind of skills, geographic location, age, gender, racial background, all that, who needs to be represented? If you're thoughtful about this and you create this, being thoughtful about, starting with being mindful of the tasks that you have to do, that the board has to do, it starts there, and you create this, then you know who you need and you know who you already have, and you've made a matrix and you can recruit for the holes. Most boards find this very useful. Boards that I have worked with, this has been part of their retreats. And this gives you your first list on starting to work with board members, on starting to standardize this. Your first list. Here's who we need. This is who we need. Okay, so that's list number one. But before you start recruiting for leadership level volunteers, you need to do some prospecting. Prospecting. So prospecting is about the research that you're going to do based on this needs matrix. Where are these people going to come from? That's the second list. Think about where those people, the people you need, where do they hang out physically and online? Are they in professional organizations? Are they in what professions? Are they at schools? What schools? Are they at retiree groups? Retirees from what? Are they at businesses? What kind of businesses? Are they also maybe hobbyists that all talk to each other on online forums? Keep in mind that many groups and clubs and organizations have regular speakers. They want somebody to come talk to them every month. They have to fill a calendar every month, and they're looking for regular speakers. And so if you just start researching these things based on the people that you know you need, you're going to find places to go. You're going to find places to go and talk and start to recruit people who are interested. We want to start to think outside the box, outside of the usual suspects, so we don't end up recycling the same people over and over again onto the boards. So first the needs matrix, say that 3 times fast. the needs matrix, list what you need, and then your second list is where do you find them? Where are you going to find those? You might also want to research partnerships with other nonprofits who have constituencies, if you will, that overlap your interests, the interests of the people you're going to work with. People who grow food might be interested in food delivery or food preparation, or know people who would be interested. Broaden the net. There are different types of activities for people with similar interests, right? Think out of the box. Who might have an affinity for what you do because of what they do? Food, restaurants, delivery companies, grocery employees. Can you go talk to a bunch of employees at a company that does deliveries? Or can you go talk to, where might you find people that are interested? You'll be surprised what you learn. It never hurts to gather information, right? And you can learn so much that can help you move forward on a road you might not otherwise go down. And this, of course, leads to and overlaps with recruiting. So now you've done all the research and everything, and it's time to recruit. So recruiting. How do you go about recruiting depends on the results of your research, right? And the decisions you've made about where you're going to look for your people, where you're going to look for leadership level volunteers. Always start from the inside. Always start from the inside out. This diagram is just an example, and these probably aren't the categories you would use. But start with those closest to your organization, okay? That's who starts to do this. That's who starts to come up with lists and people. And then you move out. You move outward to those who are affected by your organization. And then you move outward again to those who are close to those who are affected by your organization. And you continue moving outward to the community at large, right? Make more lists of possibilities. In fact, your lists have probably now become a spreadsheet. But it never has to get more complicated than that if you don't want it to. You can do this on lists and spreadsheets. I always like in-person recruiting if that's possible. And it can be virtual, we're looking at each other, right? I always like in-person recruiting if it's possible because people remember actual humans who make an impression on them. So remember that speaking engagement, right? And of course, the one-on-one conversations, again, live or virtual. And after that, the next best thing we have is video messages. I sat in on a session just a little while ago that was a marketing video that had been done that was fabulous. And you can get fancy with a videographer, or you can go to local schools that have film or video departments or video clubs, or you can do it on your phone for this kind of purpose. But something that shows board members or other organizational leaders speaking about the organization on site, preferably. On site. Why are they there? What makes this a great place to volunteer? A great place to work? Tell your stories. People relate to people. And these people are going to be deeply embedded in your organization. As long as your message is clear and it's sincere and it's warm, you can share it and get really good results. I've seen boards get really good results. You can send links to individuals who can share it with their network, or you can send it direct to lists that you get from them. You need to craft the message to appeal to the kinds of leaders that you're looking for. It's based on their interests, on what they likely want to do. A message to a farmer is a little different from one that goes to a business, is a little different from one that goes to a church, is a little different from one that goes someplace else, to a school. And then make it easy. Make it easy for them. Make sure your links are hot. Make sure that you follow up regularly. Make it easy to connect with your organization. You know this already. Marketing takes up to 7 touches for somebody to respond. So this can be the same thing. If you're posting your appeal, if you're posting your criteria online or in print, remember how much information almost everybody is getting, sifting through every day now. Post it repeatedly. If you're sending an email to an individual, set up a meeting as soon as possible, because you want to avoid the what should we call cognitive dissonance. 50-cent words. How about that? The cognitive dissonance that happens when somebody comes on here and they look at what you have presented and they go, wow, this is going to be such a great experience. This is going to be so cool to work with these people. I really want to do this. And they've expressed interest. And then the meeting isn't scheduled for a long time, or the job isn't clear, or the orientation and the support for a new board member lacks consistency. Again, standardize those procedures so you can individualize them for people and so you don't have to reinvent them. Okay, are we good? All right. I promised we would talk about job descriptions. This is what a job description contains. A board member job description is just like any other. It's the purpose and the time required and the responsibilities and all that. And it's vital to making sure that your board members know what's expected of them. It's vital to have a generic job description for board members. I had somebody at a training one time say, my board members won't fundraise. Oh, well, do they know they're supposed to fundraise? Yeah. Did you tell them before they came on that they had to fundraise? Well, no, nobody would come on the board if I told them they had to fundraise. Well, that could be your problem. You brought them on and you didn't tell them what was expected of them. So once you have this generic description, you personalize it for each member. Leaders who step up have something that they're passionate about. They have some aspect of your mission that they want to work with. And they know what they want to do, but they may not be able to articulate it until you give them more information. So conversation and feedback, that's vital to get people engaged, to keep them engaged, and it needs to be ongoing. If they just walk away from a board meeting with no more contact until the next board meeting, they're going to keep right on walking. They're going to find something more interesting to do. You keep them engaged by making them, again, part of your organizational family. They have time constraints, they have financial constraints, they have boundaries. Find out what they are. Find out what they can and can't do. Every new board member has a picture in their mind of what it's going to be like to serve on your board. Get them to share it. And then you can figure out how to make it fit into the job description and the job description fit into it so that they're doing what they want to be doing and they're getting what they need to. Okay? So, what do you need to think about when you're strategizing how to improve, how to involve leadership level volunteers in your organization? You need to think about how to bring them in. So you need to think about their orientation, first of all. Start with the people closest to your organization who already have insight, like with everything else. They have insight into your mission and your programs, and that's usually your current board. They're the ones to design and deliver the orientation for new board members. They've already been through it. If they design and they deliver the orientation, they own it. And everybody leaves the room on the same page. Right? And whether you're a board member attending this, or whether you're a staff member, or whatever, if you're a manager or a board member or whatever, everybody works together to do this. This doesn't have to fall on just one person or on just one group. Keep people interested with a regular cycle of engagement that includes more orientation when things are new, and ongoing opportunities for a variety of work, ways to measure their success so they know that they've done what they expected to do and what they wanted to do and what they wanted to accomplish. How do you measure that? Give them training and assistance and tools and celebration. Be sure you know what they want to get out of the relationship. They're individuals, they have different needs, and you won't know what they are unless you ask them. Engage them. And that's the kind of stewardship that many organizations lack, and they lose board members more quickly. This is the thing we talk about the most when we're talking about, gee, we can't keep board members. Well, what do you do to keep them? What do you do to make them want to stay? And those are the things that we have to talk about. You know, it goes for fundraising, it goes for putting on events, for orientation, for training, for outreach, for spreading the word. Leaders will lead if you let them. They will. They will lead if you let them. When boards and committees and professionals work together to design and deliver the plans and the programs, they own them. They own them together, and they will work together. Make sure they have the tools. Make sure they have the tools to do the job. If they're being asked to fundraise or they're being asked to recruit, they need the talking points, right? And then talking points need to be consistent so that your message is consistent. They need the talking points. They need the leave behinds. You know, they need the brochure, the whatever. They need the training to do that. You can't just ask your leaders to go out and do something without giving them the tools to make it happen. So you need to be planning that into the cycle, okay? So here we're talking about cultivating good habits, and they feed the needs. They feed the needs of the people in your organization so they can be better at helping you deliver everything that you're delivering. Think about generosity, think about gratitude, think about service. And here is the secret sauce. Okay. And you're gonna have to stick with me on this one. This is actually the last slide. And then we'll talk about it. And I'll field any questions that you might have or conversations that you'd like to have. But here's the secret sauce. Here's the premise. Large, high-profile nonprofits have access to high-profile, affluent, well-connected board and committee members. And they come from where? They come from the business community, the social world, the entertainment industry, the political arenas. But not all of us have that luxury. For most organizations, for most of us, our board members are small business owners, or they're mid-level managers, or they're entrepreneurs, or they're retirees, or students. They're regular people like you and me in all walks of life. What they have in common is that they want to be leaders. They are leaders. They're board members. Within our organizations, they are by definition leaders, right? Leadership level volunteers. So let's make another jump. The first definition of leadership is influence. Leaders have to lead people. We have to find ways to help our leadership level volunteers become more influential so that they have more stroke out in the community, so that they can attract more resources for our organizations because they have higher profiles. How do we do that? By leveraging recognition. Leveraging recognition through the media, print and electronic, by using things like press releases and articles and human interest stories, through blogs and social media, through external awards, nominating somebody for an award, a state level award, and recognition programs that we can develop through drawing attention to their work, to their successes and their achievements. Because not only does this make them more influential, more prominent, and more able to bring in funding and resources and attention to your organization, but it helps them. It helps them in their careers, in their businesses, in building their own success in their own field. And so this goes a long way towards solving our problems of retention and motivation among board members and committee members, among leadership level volunteers. If their involvement with us is also part of their career or business strategy, if it helps with the other goals in their lives, other causes they care about. If it's leveraging their time for more than one purpose, don't you think they'll be more likely to stick with it, to give it more effort, and to make more time for it, even after the novelty wears off? That's part of what happens. When somebody comes on a board, they're all gung-ho and they're like, no, this is a new thing. This is so cool. I want to do this. But 2 years later, the novelty has worn off. So it has to go further than altruism. We know that they care. We know they care, but it has to go further than that. It has to serve them while they serve you. That's that two-way serve circle in the cycle of engagement. Back to that diagram. So take time to find out what they need from the relationship and to build their influence as leaders. I want to say one more thing about this. They can't talk about their involvement without sounding self-serving. They can't say what great volunteers they are because that's creepy. But you can. You can talk about them. And they in turn can celebrate your great organization and the wonderful work being done and their part in it. I have spoken to dozens of leadership groups and professional organizations. And this concept of mutual benefit is almost always a big aha moment for people who are active participants already in their community, because they think it has to be just altruism, and it doesn't. Board members who start with a sense of wanting to be involved in the work of the organization, then work to leverage the recognition into more support for the nonprofit, they come to understand that a leadership strategy is for everybody. It's part of their visioning, part of their strategic plan. So they will stay, they will be successful, and everybody prospers. I guess I do have one more thing. I want to overcome a common objection that I hear often. Remember, a personal agenda isn't necessarily an ulterior motive. A personal agenda is not necessarily an ulterior motive. It's usually not too hard to tell the difference between somebody who really cares and somebody who doesn't. A personal agenda that aligns with your mission and the good of your organization can accomplish great things, and it can secure more support for your work and more satisfaction for your board members. So that's what I have for you today. Standardize to personalize, and put a strategy in place to plan, welcome, serve, and steward your leadership level volunteers. Okay, so that's really what I've got for you today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and come back so I can see y'all. And now anybody who wants to turn their camera on, anybody who wants to unmute, anybody who wants to put anything in the chat, whatever, we have a good 10 minutes. So how may I serve you today?
I have a question.
Sure.
My name is Dakota Stranik. I'm with the Linden Farmers Market.
Hi,
And
Dakota.
I'm actually the president of our board, and it's a little bit tricky because we are 100% volunteer run just through our board.
Right.
So I'm effectively our market manager as well.
Right.
And so watching your presentation makes me think it's great, but also so much more to pile on top of a board that's very, well, me
Already
really,
very
because I'm the
hands-on.
leader of the board. So that's already very minimally resourced. And so what are and I think there's a lot of farmers markets out there in this position where they don't even have a board. They maybe just have one market manager, but trying to manage all of these networks that they have. So what is your recommendation to how we can make maybe baby steps in these directions and not be overwhelmed by taking all of this on at one time?
Sure. And you are in Linden. You're my neighbor. I'm in Bellingham. So my suggestion is always going to be, in order to overcome overwhelm kind of thing, is make it smaller. Take those baby steps. Do at one board meeting, do the matrix, and then stop. And do it a little bit at a time. Your board is in a situation that many small nonprofits, not just markets, many small nonprofits are in, where the board is functioning as the staff as well. You're doing everything. One very important way and one very effective way, I think, to stay out of that overwhelm cycle is to make sure you know when you're functioning as which. Make sure you know which hat you're wearing when. And for you, Dakota, I mean, know when you're the manager and when you're the prez. You know, which hat have I got on now? And which job am I doing now? And it might even be worth it to sit down. And I'm a big planner. I believe in lists. I believe in checklists. I believe in sitting down and saying, this is what this position does, and this is what this position does. So I would break everything down and just as you said, make it baby steps. Do it one thing at a time. And if something comes up and diverts you, like something great, like somebody who wants to join your board, stop and deal with that all by itself. All by itself. But get to know that person, because they might be the person that takes a bunch of that off your plate. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Anybody else? Have we got anything in the chat? I haven't looked at the chat in a while.
I have something. I wrote it in the chat.
Sure. Hi, Diane.
Hi, I do Arlington Farmers Market, and I'm also the Stille Valley Chamber director. So I wear, just like her, multiple hats.
Right.
So what's the best way to approach a possible board member who's already really, really busy in their own life, may already own a business and have family and all those other things? How do you take all of those things into account if you think that they would be a good match?
Find out what their boundaries are. Have that conversation and say, I want to respect your boundaries. How much time do you have? I want you to promise me that you will never commit to doing something that you don't think you can do.
Okay.
Okay. I want to know what your boundaries are, because I think that you would be a great fit with us, but I don't want to cross. I don't want to ask you to do a bunch of stuff that you're going to feel bad about saying no.
Yeah. So one of the things expanding, especially right now, is people who were engaged in the past couple of years are now having to go back to work, or really, yeah, and they're finding the surprise. Well, now I have this board member position, but yet I'm being asked to work full time again, and they're
you may have to be the one. You may have to be the one who takes the initiative to say to them, I know that you have to work full time now. What time do you have to give us? And what do you most want to work on? So that, it's like sometimes there's a board member that's not a good fit, and they've been around a while and they've gotten tired, or they've gotten jaded, or they've gotten whatever, and they don't really want to be there. And sometimes they're not getting along with other people or whatever, but they won't quit. And they want to, and they want to, and what they really need is permission. What they really need is permission. And it's the same thing here with somebody whose time commitment, whose time allowance has gone down. If they will be grateful to you, and they will continue to work with you if you give them permission to say no. Because most of us don't want to say no. We don't want to feel like we're shirking our responsibilities, but give them permission to say no. I think that would work. Did I answer your question, Diane?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, thanks.
Ginny, I've got one here in the chat. Please describe how to be effective when board members are spread out across an area, cannot easily meet up face to face, and are all reliant on Zoom. Is Zoom getting in our way?
It depends. It depends. I mean, there are times when I like Zoom better because there you are. You're right here in front of me. You're right here. And there's nobody in the back corner of the room using their phone, you know, in my classroom. But I think that many boards that I work with have decided that they're going to continue to use Zoom even after they can go back face to face for some of their board meetings. They're going to take their live board meetings down and they're going to continue to use Zoom because you don't have to go anywhere. And you don't have to build in travel time. And you don't have to worry about the snowstorm. And you don't have to, you know, I think that after all this time, Zoom does not get in our way, except for a few people. Most people I have found have gotten comfortable with Zoom, tired of Zoom. I mean, there's nothing that replaces being in the same room together, right? But if we need to be on Zoom, we can find ways to make it more interesting. I was on a meeting the other day that had somebody in it who was from, who runs a television show for children. And we were talking about her board and everything. And she stopped and she said, you know what we do in our Zoom? She actually made us get up and do the hokey pokey. On Zoom, there we were, putting our right foot in and taking our right foot out. And I'm not saying make them do the hokey pokey, but you can find ways to make it more interesting. It doesn't have to be just Hollywood squares. You can find ways to make it more interesting. And so I guess that was, I was going to say long story short, but it's too late. I guess my answer is no, I don't think Zoom gets in our way.
Jenny, here's another one from Diane. So what's the best way to approach a possible board member, especially one who is already really busy in their own life?
That goes back to, I think, what we just talked about. You know, I think that may be what we just talked about, that you want to approach them and you want to find out exactly what their boundaries are. Exactly what are you interested in and how much time do you have to give? I want to respect your boundaries.
And here, this is from Jennifer. Can you talk about specific ways to nurture the connection between the professional staff and a governance board? You know, maybe some specific ways, and how to make sure they understand and observe the other's role.
First of all, make sure those roles are clear. Make sure that those roles are clearly spelled out. Typically, a board is governance. You're talking about, sometimes it's characterized as head and hands. The board is governance, that's policy, that's setting the course, that's making sure that there's compliance, that's the 3 duties, that's those kinds of things. And the management is day-to-day operations and making sure that those don't cross. And there's nothing wrong with inviting the board in. If the staff, through the manager, through the executive director, wants to invite the board in for specific things. Oh, you have expertise in marketing and we're doing a marketing plan. Would you like to be on the committee? That's fine. What we want to worry about is when the board comes in and is trying to direct the staff, or the board comes in and is trying to take the staff away from what they're doing, from their duties. So we want to make sure that those roles are clearly delineated. And the board and the staff, depending on how big the organization is, how many board members there are, how many staff members there are, all of that, you get to decide what those roles are. Those roles are not set in stone. You get to decide what they are, but make sure that they're clear, whatever you decide that they are, and that everybody stays in their own lane. And make that part of your organizational culture. That one board member that nobody's afraid to say to the other, wait a minute, I think that falls into somebody else's purview. So make sure that's part of your culture, that it's all right to say that, so that everybody does what they have said they're going to do and what they want to be doing.
I've got, I think it was Vedlana who had her
I see.
hand raised.
Yes.
I see Svetlana has her hand raised. When you
Yeah.
raise your hand up, did you know, Zoom thing, did you know that when you raise your hand, it takes you to the top left-hand corner of the screen?
Oh, it does.
Yeah, it does. It brings
Well,
you forward
yeah.
so that you can be seen. Yes.
Well, my name is Vedlana. I am a SNAP and nutrition educator for WSU Pierce County Extension. And I wear many hats in the community because in Pierce County, we have large Slavic communities, and I speak three languages like Russian, Ukrainian, Moldovan, and English. So, and I'm a community ambassador for the Harvest Pierce County. And it's just like, because there's nobody else. I mean, like people, I moved to this country as a like teenager, lived here for 32 years already. And you know, the community, all the food banks I'm teaching. So I was a board member, I think the farmers market board member about 5 years ago. I think this part, Jenny, thank you so much. I think I was like, had like some mild trauma because I was trying to find what did I do wrong? There are so many ideas I had. And I assumed that they got me there because I was invited. I didn't, like, it's like, well, to help out with the language barriers, but it's not the thing. And I had so many ideas, but and we would sit around the table and I was like more on the shy, side. But I could bring church leaders. I could bring like some community, like businessmen who could be like, like donators of what, but no one asked. My role was not clear and I was elected for 2 years. I found like different excuses to leave like after a year because I felt that I was useless. I did not bring anything to the table. But I did not know if it was appropriate for me to put my ideas on the table. So right now, like listening to all of this, I'm like, wait a minute, there was some missing, link, something missing in the chain, the connector. So I'm like, wow, now I know. So I'm thinking my advisor, would be something for the leaders to be clear on people's roles or give them an opportunity, like to ask what their vision is. Something, because I was just sitting there. I felt so uncomfortable. I'm not going to say what farmers market. I felt so uncomfortable because I had no idea what I was doing there. So this is my 2 cents in this.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Svetlana. It's so important to know you have to, leaders are going to lead, but you have to empower them to do that. You have to let them do that. And you have so much to bring. you have so much to bring to a board.
I'm fortunate, I think, because my mom is pure Russian. My dad is Ukrainian, and I grew up in Moldova and I moved here. So I have peace with everyone in the community because I have a part of everyone. Yeah, so I could.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for that.
Jenny, Kara asked, can you give some advice on how to work with an overzealous board? Members who are overshadowing the quieter board members. How can I assist in providing space to allow all board members to share their ideas?
Okay, I would, and that's a meeting tactic. And I would, whenever that happens, because there's always going to be somebody who's more outgoing. You got your extroverts, you got your introverts, you got everybody else who's in the middle, right? And there's always going to be somebody who is going to try to dominate the conversation. And so I would structure it. I would use something where you go around the room and everybody has a turn. There is a technique where and I can share this afterwards if you'd like me to, but basically the technique is everybody answers the same questions. Why is this important? Why is this important to you? Why is this important to us as a group? And what should our next step be? And you go through and nobody else gets the opportunity to chime in at all. And everybody goes through, and you can use this kind of a technique when you're discussing anything. And then you make sure that everybody has a conversation and everybody has a chance to talk who wants to, and that the person who is going to always talk more than the other shuts up long enough for everybody else to talk. And it's just the different natures of people. But if you use something structured like that, you can even go back and use, pass a talking stick. You can even go back and use some other kind of method to make sure that everybody has a chance. And if they don't have anything to say, if they don't want to talk, they can pass. They can pass to the next person. And that's fine, but make sure that everybody gets that chance. Does that help? I hope that helps.
Jenny, here's one from Joy. Struggling with a small board who are family, having difficulties letting the dead weight go.
Well, you need term limits, first of all, and the new Washington Nonprofit Act has definite language about term limits. So having term limits and then making it part of your bylaws that people have to take a year off in between. They can get reelected after that, but they have to take some time off. And they have to also making it part of your bylaws that they have to replace themselves. That's helpful. It is difficult, especially if you're in a small community. And maybe it's time to bring some new blood on just one person, just one at a time, and let them start. But you're going to have to start to change the culture. You're going to have to find a way to start to change that culture so that it's not so inbred. And that's difficult. I know that's difficult to do in smaller communities. But the only thing you can do is find somebody on the board, and it sounds like it's you, find somebody on the board who wants to, I have somebody who would be really great on our board. I want to bring them in. Let's talk about this and start with that. But term limits, put term limits into your bylaws. And I know that's way easier to say than it is to do.
We've got about 5 minutes left in our session. If you've got questions, now's the time. Here's another question on. No, I think we already answered that one. Any other questions that you have? Put them in the chat. Raise your hand.
Anything that you're talking about here, you're talking about interpersonal dynamics, and anything that you can read, anything that you can find on dispute resolution, on conflict management, on all of those things. I mean, when you're talking about conflict management, that it has to be about the issue and not about the person. That it has to be, but any of those things, there's lots of training out there. There's lots of stuff to read out there, but you're talking about interpersonal issues always. So I hope it was helpful. Let me look at the chat for a second. I think I saw a message come through. Hi, Joy. It's good to see you too. It's good to see you all. Thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate your attendance and I appreciate your attention.
I just wanted to jump in for a second and just remind people to check for the evaluation link and to fill that out. That would be great. That'd be very helpful. And
I like to get the evaluations too. It's the only way we get better is to see what everybody thought, right? That's
right.
Is it already in the chat?
Great job. Thank you.
And I would be remiss if I didn't remind you all that the annual meeting of the Washington State Farmers Market Association is today at 10:45. That's about a half an hour. 10:45, did I say? 12:45. I'm in a different time zone. Most people that know me say I am all the time anyway. But the annual meeting, 12:45 to 1:30. And the login for that is there in the chat as well.
Let's see what else we have. Any more
Dakota-
ideas on how to give back to board
Yeah,
members
there you
to
go.
make it worth their while? We don't have funding for that. Give back to board members with recognition. Give back to board members by finding out if they would like you to put something in the newsletter. If you would like to recognize them in your newsletter, recognize them in the newspaper, recognize them online, recognize them on your website. You can do all of that without spending any money. Thank you goes a long way, but thanks that nobody sees doesn't go as far as thanks that other people see. The first time somebody stops one of your board members on the street and says, oh, I saw that story about you on the website or in the newspaper. The first time somebody is, I promise your board member's going to come back and feel appreciated. So.
Ginny, thank you for
You're
your
most
presentation and being our speaker. And those of you that are out there in our little boxes, thank you for participating in this session. Please take a moment to complete your evaluation. That's really important. It's there in the chat. Now, this room will stay open as we prepare for the next session. If you'd like to continue talking with others, we encourage you to visit the lobby virtual meetup in the community tab that you can find as you look around at it. Ginny, it's always great to see you.
good to see you too, Jerry.
Today. Thank you for all your help and expertise.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Terry, for your help. And I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye, everybody.
Awesome. Bye-bye.